Welcome back. The other big story we are tracking today. US President Donald Trump hosted Ukrainian President Zelensky and 7 other European leaders at the White House last evening. There were meetings between Trump and Zelensky, as well as a gathering that also involved the European leaders. Trump's meeting with Zelensky was much more warmer and conciliatory than their previous showdown a few months ago. US President Trump hinted at security guarantees for Ukraine backed by European leaders, but stopped short of making any concrete commitments towards a peace deal. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian leader repeatedly thanked the US president. President Trump said on social media that he has begun arranging a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. He said he will work on a trilateral meeting after that bilateral takes place. The Ukrainian president at a news conference said he is ready for any format of a meeting with the Russian president. And we still have with us former diplomat Anil Trigunayat, former diplomat KC Singh, former Indian ambassador to WTO Anjali Prasad, and strategic affairs expert Brahma Chellaney. Brahma Chellaney, if I can come with you, what's the biggest takeaway from this White House meeting between Donald Trump, European leaders, and Zelensky? Next, Trump is hoping for a trilateral between him, Zelensky, and Putin. Are we now on the road to peace?
First, in a world where the US, China, and Russia are the 3 leading powers, the Alaska summit underscored Trump's bid to redraw this great power triangle. Trump now recognizes that America's own missteps have helped drive Russia closer to China, fueling a de facto alliance that poses the gravest threat to America's global preeminence since the Cold War. So in that sense, the Alaska pivot represents good news for India, because India has been concerned right since 2022 that American policy is forcing Moscow to move closer to China, and a Sino-Russian partnership or an alliance would be very inimical to India's vital interests. So finally, we are seeing some movement in Washington, and we are seeing, though, that Trump's effort to undo that policy approach is already running into stiff resistance from the establishment, which means the US deep state. But if he succeeds in actually improving US-Russia ties, which will require an end to the Ukraine war, which is the reason why he is investing political capital in ending this conflict, because America is deeply involved in this war, and this war is not going in favor of the West. This is a war which the US and its allies could eventually lose. So Trump is seeking to cut America's losses so that the US can refocus its resources and attention to the Indo-Pacific, where the real contest confronts the US, which is with China. China is the only power in the world that can supplant the US as the world's foremost power. And the Trump foreign policy approach clearly is to shift from the current focus on Europe and the Middle East to the Indo-Pacific, so that the US can tackle the real challenge there.
Right. So Trump looking for an exit from the Ukraine war. Ambassador KC Singh, if I were to come to you now, some of the European leaders were very clear that we need a ceasefire before the next meeting. Do you think that is critical before embarking on any plan for peace?
I think it was mainly the German chancellor who raised it. And then President Trump kind of brushed it aside. They were like schoolboys. People have put a picture of that because he took them to the Oval Office, seated them in front of him. It wasn't good for the image of the European leaders. And as far as we in India is concerned, it would be good to see Europe united in putting up some resistance to America. Because in a multipolar world, if the Europeans already done a trade deal with America, and that kind of reduces the options that India has. And that's why you're turning to China. As yet, there's a huge gap between what President Putin wants and what Zelensky can concede. Because Putin wants the entire Donbass area. Will he settle for the status quo? We don't know. Will he sit down I don't see him sitting down and talking to Zelensky unless Zelensky surrenders. So maybe at best the two delegations can meet. The Europeans are trying their best to make sure that Trump doesn't go off at a tangent. They don't completely lose his support. So they were playing along to the extent they could. But finally, they are the ones who are really concerned. Why do you think the president of Finland was there? Because he said, look, we've had a problem. We have an 800-mile frontier with Russia. Because everybody with a frontier with Russia is worried that if Russia gets a win, and what is said is that if he gets the entire Donbass, then it becomes much easier for him to penetrate the rest of Ukraine. And that's what Europeans are worried about. The French president quite clearly was not happy with what was happening there. So there is disunity, and that's what President Putin wants. He wants disunity in NATO. He wants the European countries to be debating with each other and not with him. So it remains to be seen how it shapes up hereafter. The next few weeks will be important. And with Trump, you don't know what happens in the next week. He tends to change. He doesn't act strategically or think strategically. It's all tactical and day to day. So depending on that. But of course, I agree that it's important if Ukraine is out of focus, because then the 25% extra tariffs that Americans are talking about for India buying Russian oil, then that subject will be off. Then we'll be just discussing a trade deal and just 25% which has been imposed and not the punitive tariffs. But that may not happen for 6 months or 3 to 6 months.
Let me now go across to Anjali Prasad with that question. Ms. Prasad, the way we are seeing things right now, Trump is not getting a deal with Russia on ending the war anytime soon. India is the leverage there, unfortunately, which he considers as leverage right now. We don't know how much of an impact it is having on Putin. But do you feel that, considering that US negotiators did not want to come to India for the 6th round of talks, which was supposed to be held on 25th of this month, that has been cancelled, would that indicate to you that the US is not wanting to pursue trade talks with India at this juncture? And that 50% tariff is now going to be a reality?
Well, I have felt all along that the US is not sure what it wants to do, frankly. My reading is that they will not go ahead with this 50% tariff because they will have internal opposition to this. Their own economy will be affected if they go ahead with this. Although they've kept pharmaceuticals out of this, but the other sectors are also up in arms to some extent with his kind of trade anarchy that he's created. So I am still of the view that he may not go ahead with this 50%. He may, although they have cancelled this round of talks, they may still try and get a deal, as they call it, although I wouldn't call it a deal, because we are not the demanders here, and the products that they are interested in are very sensitive for us. So I don't think that Mr. Trump will go ahead with this 50%, frankly.
Right. All right. That's an important point. Let's hope so as well, ma'am. Final question to Ambassador Trigunayat. Ambassador Trigunayat, looking at what's happening in the White House, looking at Donald Trump's priorities, he's trying to get Russia to stop fighting. He wants to get an exit out of the Russia-Ukraine war. All the Europeans are there trying to put pressure on Trump, trying to put pressure on Putin as well. Do you feel that India will really have to navigate these geopolitical waters very carefully? Are we looking at certain hard reset also in our traditional geopolitical strategies? You know, Brahma Chellaney spoke about the need of doing away with ad hocism. Do you think we now need to take a hard look at the way we are approaching our relationships?
Well, I think that we have to be a realist. We must realize in the old dictum that there are no permanent enemies or friends. and there are only permanent interests. As long as we can protect our interests, that should be the way to go. And that was precisely the Indian government is trying to do at the moment. I'm talking to you from Moscow right now. I must tell you that here, we are only looking at the Russia-Ukraine war as the primary mover of this discussion between Trump and Putin. Frankly, it was essentially the Russia-US relationship that has been the main mover of this particular thing, and not necessarily the primary thing is the Russia-Ukraine war. President Trump obviously wants to show it because he has been committing to it that some kind of deal can be found at whatever cost. It could be a frozen conflict for all that matters. But at the same time, I don't think that he has already laid out that Crimea will not be given NATO, they will not become a NATO member, Donbass might stay with Russia. So if all that happens, and I believe that ipso facto, it looks like that the Europeans are also agreeable to that. So they are all hinging on what kind of security guarantees are to be provided to the Ukrainians. As far as India is concerned, I personally somehow tend to believe that irrespective of the outcome of these talks, whatever happens, whether there's a deal or not, these 25% that he has put against us, additional penalty because of buying Russian oil, has nothing really to do with the Russian oil. It is more to do with his personal, grudge that he has against India for not being credited with this the India-Pakistan, the ceasefire deal. So that's precisely what, as far as India is concerned, that's what's being driven.
Okay, so hopefully there will be some creative diplomacy and back-channel talks that may resolve things. We'll have to end there, but thank you very much to Ambassador KC Singh, Brahma Chellaney, Anjali Prasad, Anil Trigunayat for taking out time for CNBC-TV18 on these important issues. With that, it's a wrap on this broadcast. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.